Yesterday, he called down fire from heaven. Today, he is lying under a tree in the desert, asking God to let him die. This is the same man, the same faith, the same God. How does the prophet who just won the greatest spiritual victory in Israel's history end up here, alone, exhausted, and done? That question is not just about Elijah. It is about every person who has ever hit a wall after their greatest moment. Every person who has ever burned out, in ministry, in faith, in life. Every person who has ever whispered to God, "I have had enough." This is the real story of Elijah, and it was written for you. Elijah came from Tishbe, a town so small and forgotten that we cannot find it on any ancient map. No royal lineage, no priestly training, no political connections. Just a man from nowhere who heard from God. King Ahab had done more evil in the sight of the Lord than any king before him. Under the influence of his wife Jezebel, a Phoenician princess who brought the worship of Baal with her as a dowry, the northern kingdom of Israel had turned away from God on an industrial scale. 850 prophets of Baal and Asherah ate at Jezebel's table. The prophets of God were being hunted and killed. Into this world, God sent one man, from one forgotten town, with one word. As the Lord God of Israel lives, before whom I stand, there will be neither dew nor rain in the next few years except at my word. And Elijah walked out, and the sky closed. For 3 years, the sky stayed shut. No rain, no dew. The land cracked open, the rivers dried, the crops died. And Ahab, the most powerful man in Israel, spent 3 years searching for one man from one forgotten town. When they finally met face to face, Ahab had one thing to say. "Is that you, you troubler of Israel?" And Elijah answered without blinking, "I have not troubled Israel. You have, you and your father's house, by abandoning the Lord's commands and following the Baals." Then he gave Ahab a command. "Summon all Israel to Mount Carmel. Bring the 450 prophets of Baal. Bring the 400 prophets of Asherah." And Ahab, the king, obeyed the man from nowhere. The stage was set for the greatest spiritual confrontation in the Old Testament. Elijah's proposal was simple. 2 altars, 2 gods. The one who answers by fire, he is God. The prophets of Baal went first. They called from morning until noon. They danced, they cried out, they cut themselves until the blood flowed. Nothing. No voice, no response, no fire. At evening, Elijah stepped forward. He rebuilt the altar of the Lord with 12 stones. He dug a trench around it. He had 4 large jars of water poured over the sacrifice, and then 4 more, and then 4 more. Everything soaked, the trench full of water. Then Elijah prayed, not loudly, not frantically, just, "God, let it be known today that you are God in Israel, and that I am your servant." The fire of the Lord fell. It consumed the offering, the wood, the stones, the soil. It licked up the water in the trench. And every person watching fell face down and cried, "The Lord, He is God. The Lord, He is God." The drought broke that same day. The rain came, and Elijah ran ahead of Ahab's chariot all the way to Jezreel, 17 miles, in the power of God. He was at the absolute peak of his life, and then everything collapsed. What happens next is the part of Elijah's story that nobody talks about. And it may be the most important part of his entire life, and possibly yours. Jezebel heard what Elijah had done, and she sent him a message. "May the gods deal with me, be it ever so severely, if by this time tomorrow I do not make your life like one of them." And Elijah, the man who had just stood alone against 850 prophets and called down fire from heaven, was afraid. He ran. He left his servant behind. He walked alone into the desert for a full day. He sat under a juniper tree, and he prayed the most honest prayer of his entire life. "I have had enough, Lord. Take my life. I am no better than my ancestors." Then he lay down and fell asleep. This is burnout. This is what complete spiritual, emotional, and physical exhaustion actually looks like. Not weakness, not failure of faith. The inevitable crash after giving everything you have for a cause that felt like it should have been over by now. Elijah had expected the fire to change everything. Jezebel should have repented. Israel should have been restored. The battle should have been won. Instead, a death threat, and the realization that nothing had actually changed. That kind of disillusionment does not just exhaust the body, it empties the soul. God did not send a rebuke. He did not send a sermon. He did not appear in fire or wind or earthquake. He did not say, "What are you doing here? You just called down fire, get back to work." He sent an angel with bread and water. "Get up and eat." Elijah ate and drank and lay down again. And the angel came back a second time. "Get up and eat. The journey is too much for you. The journey is too much for you." God did not minimize Elijah's exhaustion. He did not tell him to push through. He did not question his faith or his commitment. He acknowledged that what Elijah was carrying was genuinely too heavy. And he fed him. This is how God responds to burnout. Not with demands, with provision, with presence, with the most basic human needs, food, rest, and the knowledge that someone sees how heavy it has become. Strengthened by that food, Elijah traveled 40 days and 40 nights until he reached Horeb, the mountain of God. At the mountain of God, Elijah went into a cave and spent the night. And God asked him the question he asks every exhausted servant who has run to the end of themselves. "What are you doing here, Elijah?" And Elijah told him everything. The zeal, the effort, the loneliness. "I am the only one left, and now they want my life too." God told him, "Go out and stand on the mountain." A wind came that was so powerful it tore the mountains apart and shattered the rocks. God was not in the wind. An earthquake. God was not in the earthquake. Fire. God was not in the fire. And then, a still small voice, a gentle whisper, almost nothing, barely a sound at all. And Elijah knew. He pulled his cloak over his face and went to stand at the entrance of the cave. God had just split mountains and shaken the earth and sent fire, and none of that was where he chose to meet Elijah. He met him in a whisper. Because Elijah did not need a demonstration of power. He had seen plenty of power. What he needed, what every burned-out soul needs, is the intimate voice of a God who came close enough to whisper. Elijah's story is for every person who has ever hit a wall after their greatest victory. For every pastor, every parent, every servant of God who poured everything they had into something that mattered, and then found themselves lying under a tree wondering if they have anything left. For every person who expected the fire to change everything, and then got a death threat instead. Here is what God wrote into Elijah's story for you. Burnout is not a spiritual failure. It is a human reality. And God does not respond to it with judgment. He responds to it the way he responded to Elijah, with bread with rest, with presence, and with a whisper that says, "The journey is too much for you, and I know it, and I am here." You do not need a mountain-splitting wind to know God is near. Sometimes He is nearest in the stillest, quietest moment, when you finally stop running and sit down in your cave and let Him find you there. He found Elijah. He will find you. And there is one more thing God told Elijah in that cave that changed everything. You are not alone. There are 7,000 in Israel who have not bowed to Baal. 7,000. Elijah thought he was the only one. He was not even close. Neither are you. If Elijah's story spoke to something you are carrying today, if you needed to hear that burnout is not the end, and God meets us in our exhaustion, please like this video and subscribe to His Story Told. Every week we go deeper into the lives of the people of the Bible and the lessons God wrote into their stories for every one of us. Hit the bell so you never miss an episode, and share this with someone who is lying under their own juniper tree today, someone who needs to know the whisper is coming. History is His story, and it is still being written. We will see you in the next one.